I woke up to the sound of a door closing. Not a creak, not the house settling, a door closing. I held my breath, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe I hadn't closed the bedroom door all the way, and a draft had nudged it shut. Maybe I was imagining things. Then I heard footsteps, slow, measured, coming from down the hall. I reached for my phone, but my hands were clammy, slipping over the screen. The footsteps stopped just outside my bedroom door. I could hear breathing, low, uneven, not mine. And then, knock, knock, knock. I never thought I'd own a house. For most of my life, the idea seemed impossible, too expensive, too much responsibility. But when my grandmother passed, she left me her home, a modest one-story house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't in great shape. The paint was peeling, the floors creaked, and the pipes groaned when you ran the water. But it was mine. I'm 32, single. I work in it, which means long hours in front of a screen, and I like the idea of coming home to my own space. No landlords, no noisy neighbors, just quiet. Too quiet, as it turned out. From the first night, the house felt off. I can't explain it any better than that. It wasn't anything obvious, just a vague, creeping unease, like walking into a room and forgetting why you're there. I told myself it was just the adjustment period. Moving from a tiny apartment to a house with actual space was a big change. The silence was new. I just needed time. Then the noises started. At first, it was little stuff. The occasional creak in the hallway, faint taps against the walls, normal old house sounds. But then, I started finding doors open that I knew I had closed. The basement door, for example. I had no reason to go down there. It was cold, musty, and mostly empty aside from a few old boxes my grandmother had left behind. But every few days, I'd find the door cracked open. Not wide, just enough to see the darkness yawning beyond the frame. I started locking it. But even then, some mornings I'd wake up to find it ajar. Then there were the shadows. Not real shadows, I never actually saw anything. But sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch something shifting in the hallway. A flicker of movement in the reflection of the microwave door. Every time I turned to look, nothing was there, just my imagination. That's what I told myself, until the night I heard footsteps. I called my friend Mark over for a drink that weekend. Mark is one of those people who makes everything feel normal, like the world is just a collection of logical pieces that fit together if you think about them long enough. Dude, you just need some white noise, he said, cracking open a beer. Total silence will mess with your head. Get a fan or something. Maybe he was right. We sat in the living room for a while, watching old movies, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt normal. That night, I slept with my bedroom door open. Nothing happened. No noises. No doors opening on their own. For the first time since moving in, I actually felt comfortable. That feeling lasted exactly 3 days. I had a spare room in the house, one I hadn't done anything with yet. It was small, just a bare mattress on the floor and an old dresser left over from my grandmother's things. One night, as I was brushing my teeth, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The door to that room was open. I never left it open. I always kept it shut because, frankly, it creeped me out. The room smelled different, musty and stale, like something rotting just beneath the surface. And now it was wide open. I turned off the bathroom light, standing there in the dim glow of the hallway, staring at the dark space beyond the doorframe. Something was wrong. I stepped closer, my breath shallow. The air was colder here, heavier. And then, from inside the room, a whisper. I didn't hear words, just a soft, breathy exhale, like someone exhaling right up against my ear. I slammed the door shut and locked it. After that, things got worse. The whispering continued, always late at night, always too faint to make out. Sometimes, I'd hear shuffling sounds in the hallway when I was in bed. The first time I convinced myself it was just the house settling. The second time, I knew better, because the sound stopped right outside my bedroom door. Every night, I pushed my dresser against the door before I went to sleep, and every morning, I woke up to find the door slightly open. One night, I decided to stay awake, just to see. I turned off all the lights, climbed into bed, and waited. Hours passed, nothing, just silence. Then, sometime around 3 a.m., a soft, deliberate click. The door to the spare room. Opening. I sat up, heart pounding. The hallway was pitch black. Then, In the silence, I heard it. Footsteps. Not fast, not hurried, just walking, and then they stopped. Right outside my bedroom door. I reached for my phone, barely breathing. My fingers trembled as I opened the flashlight app. I hesitated. Then I turned it on. The beam cut through the dark hallway and landed on an open doorway. The spare room. I had locked it. I knew I had locked it. But now the door was wide open. And inside, the mattress wasn't empty. A figure was lying there, covered by the sheet, like someone had been sleeping there for weeks. The shape of a body, motionless. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run, to scream, to do something, but I couldn't move. And then, the sheet started to rise. Something was sitting up. I ran, out the front door, into the night, barefoot and shaking. I slept in my car that night, parked 2 streets over. I never went back inside. I put the house up for sale within a week. I didn't take anything with me. I didn't care. Months later, I got a call from the real estate agent. "Hey," he said, "I don't want to freak you out, but we had a contractor come check the place out before listing it. He found something weird in the crawl space under the house." I swallowed hard. "What?" The agent hesitated. There was a mattress down there. Some blankets looked like someone had been living there for a while. I hung up without saying a word. I still don't know who was in my house or how long they had been there, but I know one thing. They never left through the front door. The first time I heard it, I was half asleep. A soft click, the unmistakable sound of a doorknob turning. I opened my eyes. The bedroom door was closed. I told myself it was my imagination until I heard it again. Click. And then, the slow, deliberate creak of the door opening. Buying a house alone at 30 wasn't exactly how I pictured my life going, but after years of renting tiny apartments, I was ready for something more permanent. It wasn't a dream home, just a modest 2-bedroom on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. The previous owner had passed away, and the house had been sitting empty for a while. Still, the price was right, and it felt like a fresh start. I moved in on a cold Saturday morning, the air thick with the scent of dust and fresh paint. My first night, I sat on the floor of my living room, eating takeout straight from the container, feeling something close to content. It finally felt like I had a place of my own. For the first few days, everything was fine, and then the noises started. At first, it was just the usual house sounds, settling wood, the occasional creak of old pipes. But after a week, I started noticing patterns. Every night, around the same time, I'd hear the floorboards creak near the hallway, always in the same spot, like someone was standing just outside my bedroom door. Then there were the doors themselves. I'd wake up in the morning to find the bathroom door open, even though I was certain I'd closed it the night before. I'd hear faint clicks in the middle of the night, as if doorknobs were being tested, turned slowly, carefully. I told myself it was nothing, just the quirks of an old house. But then one night, something happened that I couldn't explain. It was past midnight when I woke up, groggy and disoriented. Something felt off. I turned over in bed, and my breath caught in my throat. The bedroom door was open, wide open. I knew I had closed it before going to sleep. I stared at the dark hallway beyond, heart pounding, every instinct in my body screaming at me not to move. Then, from somewhere in the house, a quiet thump. I wasn't alone. For a long time, I just lay there, barely breathing. Then, forcing myself to move, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I swung the beam across the hallway. Empty. Slowly, I got up and checked the house. Every room, every closet, even the basement. Nothing. I told myself I must have forgotten to close the door, that the noise had been the house settling. I didn't believe it, but I needed to. For a while, things seemed to calm down. I made a conscious effort not to dwell on the weirdness. I left the radio on at night to drown out the silence, kept the doors shut, and convinced myself that everything had a logical explanation. A friend even came over for dinner one evening. We drank wine, laughed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt normal again. That night, I slept with my door shut and locked. Nothing happened. I woke up feeling like maybe, just maybe, I had been overreacting. And then, the next night, I saw it. I had just turned off the bedside lamp when I heard it again. A soft click, the doorknob turning. My body went rigid. Then, the door opened, slowly, by itself. The hallway beyond was dark, but my eyes adjusted quickly, and that's when I saw it. A figure, standing in the hallway, still, silent, just watching. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. And then, it took a step toward me. I fumbled for the lamp, my hand shaking so badly I almost knocked it over. The light flicked on, and the hallway was empty. The door was still open, but there was no one there. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I called a locksmith and had new deadbolts installed. I double-checked every window, every entrance. I needed to believe that this was all in my head. But then, while moving some old boxes in the attic, I found something. A door, a small wooden door in the farthest corner of the attic, barely noticeable behind a stack of furniture. It had no handle, just a keyhole. I pressed my ear against it, listening. For a long time, there was nothing. And then, a faint shuffling sound, like something moving inside. I stumbled back, heart hammering. I didn't open it. I didn't want to know what was behind it. I should have left then, but I didn't. I fell asleep with every light in the house on. At some point in the night, I woke up. The lights were off. The power hadn't gone out. The bedside lamp clicked on as soon as I turned the switch, but every other light in the house had been shut off. Someone had been inside. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding, and called the police. I told them someone had broken in, that I could feel someone in the house. They arrived within minutes, searched the entire place. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no unlocked doors or windows. The officer gave me a strange look, like he didn't believe me. I didn't blame him, but before they left, one of them hesitated in the hallway, staring at the attic door. He turned to me, expression unreadable. "You know the history of this house?" I shook my head. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "A couple years back, there was an old man living here, bit of a recluse. One day he just disappeared. No family, no will, just gone. They searched for months, but never found him." I felt my stomach twist. "What does that have to do with anything?" I asked. The officer shrugged. "They never checked the attic. I moved out the next morning. I didn't pack. I didn't clean. I just left. A month later, the house was back on the market. They never mentioned the attic door in the listing. And I never told anyone what I heard on my last night there. As I was leaving, when I locked the front door for the last time, from somewhere inside the house, I heard it, a soft click, the sound of a door unlocking. The first night in the new house, I heard someone whisper my name. It wasn't loud, barely more than a breath, but it was unmistakable. I had just turned off the hallway light, standing at the threshold of my bedroom, when I heard it soft, deliberate. "Daniel." I froze, my fingers still on the light switch. My brain scrambled for a rational explanation. Maybe it was the wind outside, the old pipe settling, or my imagination playing tricks on me after a long, exhausting day. I'd spent the past 12 hours moving boxes, assembling furniture, and scrubbing every inch of the place. My body ached, my mind was foggy. That had to be it. I shook my head, exhaling sharply. "You're just tired." Ignoring the creeping unease clawing at the back of my mind, I shut the bedroom door and climbed into bed. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and forced my eyes shut. I was too exhausted for this. And then, just as I was drifting off, a floorboard creaked right outside my bedroom door. The house on Sycamore Lane was supposed to be my fresh start. After my divorce, I needed a place of my own, somewhere quiet, somewhere I could rebuild. It wasn't perfect, an older house, a little run down, but affordable. Still, I liked it. It had charm. Crown molding, original hardwood floors, a wraparound porch. I even liked the odd quirks, the way the kitchen cabinets stuck, the old radiator that clanked in the middle of the night. It felt lived in. I had no history with this house, no ghosts of the past, but something about it felt. The first few days were uneventful, but something gnawed at me, an unshakable sensation of being watched. It wasn't paranoia, at least not at first, just little things. Like the way I would set my coffee mug down and find it on the other side of the counter. Or how the bathroom door, which I always left open, would be slightly ajar in the morning, as if someone had nudged it closed. Once, I came home from work and found the hallway light on. I was sure I had turned it off. Then came the noises. At first, it was just the normal sounds of an old house, the wind rattling the windows, the floorboards creaking under their own weight. But soon, I started hearing footsteps, soft, deliberate steps, late at night, moving from room to room. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard something shift in the hallway outside my door. A slow, dragging sound. I held my breath, listening. Nothing. And then, a quiet knock. Just one. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself I was imagining it, but I knew I wasn't. Someone had knocked on my bedroom door. I started keeping a baseball bat by my bed. I told myself it was just stress, the adjustment to a new place. Maybe I was still raw from the divorce, still on edge. That made sense, right? Then, for a few days, things got better. No weird sounds, no misplaced objects, just silence. I started to feel like myself again, until I found the note. It was on the kitchen counter when I got home from work. A small, yellowed piece of paper. There was only one sentence, written in jagged, uneven handwriting. You looked right at me. I stared at it for a long time, my hands trembling. Someone had been in my house. I checked every door, every window, all locked, no signs of forced entry. I searched the entire house, from the basement to the attic. Nothing. But I felt it then, something watching me, not from outside, from inside. That night, I slept with a baseball bat in one hand and my phone in the other. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up suddenly, a weight pressed against my chest. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Something was standing in the corner of my room, a shape, tall, motionless, watching. I tried to scream, but my throat locked. And then, just as suddenly as it had come, the weight lifted. The shape was gone. I gasped for air, clutching my chest. My entire body was slick with sweat. I turned on every light in the house. I didn't care how ridiculous it looked. I sat in the kitchen until sunrise, gripping the baseball bat, waiting for the walls to breathe, for the floor to shift, for something to move in the corners of my vision. Nothing did. But I knew then, I wasn't alone. The last night in that house, I saw it. I had been sleeping with the lights on, but that night, the power cut out around midnight. At first, I just lay there in the dark, heart pounding. Then I heard it, a whisper. Daniel, not from the hallway, not from outside, from inside my room. I bolted upright, my pulse roaring in my ears. The closet door was open. I never left the closet door open. Inside, something moved, a shape crouched, waiting. It unfolded slowly, unnaturally, rising to its full height. Too tall. I didn't wait to see its face. I ran. I never went back. I left everything behind: clothes, furniture, my wallet. I drove to a motel that night and never stepped foot in that house again. The next morning, I called a moving company and told them to pack everything. I didn't care what they saw, what they felt. I just wanted out. A week later, I sold the house at a loss. I don't know if I believe in ghosts. I don't know if what I saw was real, or if my mind had finally cracked under the weight of stress and exhaustion. But I do know this. I was not alone in that house. And whatever was there, it's still waiting. I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in my kitchen. At first, I wasn't fully awake, and my brain struggled to make sense of the noise. A slow, deliberate step, then another. My apartment in the city had thin walls, and I was used to the muffled sounds of neighbors. But here, in this house alone, those footsteps didn't belong. I held my breath and listened. The footsteps continued, unhurried, moving across the tiled floor. I tried to remember if I had locked the door before going to bed. Had I? Then, just as suddenly as they started, the steps stopped. Silence pressed against the walls, thick and suffocating. I wanted to believe I had imagined it, that maybe the house was settling, or an animal had somehow gotten inside. But I knew better, because whoever had been walking wasn't just wandering. They had stopped right outside my bedroom door. I never wanted to live in a house. I always liked apartments, smaller, safer, neighbors just a wall away. But after years of cramped city living, the idea of space and quiet started to sound appealing. When I found this house, a modest one-story home on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood, it felt like a fresh start. I'm 31, single, and work from home as a freelance editor, which meant I needed a place I actually liked being in. This house had charm. It wasn't new, but it had been renovated recently, fresh paint, new appliances, and hardwood floors that creaked just enough to remind you they had history. The first few days were peaceful. I unpacked, arranged furniture, and got used to the silence. At night, I could hear the wind moving through the trees outside, the occasional creak of the house settling. It was different from the constant noise of the city, but I told myself I'd adjust. And then, small things started happening. The first thing I noticed was the door. The house had a back door leading to a small patio. I hardly used it, but one morning, I found it slightly open, just a crack. At first, I assumed I had forgotten to lock it, but something about it made me uneasy. The lock wasn't just undone, the deadbolt was fully turned. I locked it and tried to move on. Then came the noises. At night, I'd hear faint creaks from the hallway, like the weight of footsteps on old wood. I told myself it was the house settling, or maybe even my own paranoia. I had spent too long in apartments, where the sound of people moving around was constant. Maybe my brain was filling in the gaps, but there was something else. A smell. It came and went, faint, almost unnoticeable. It was the kind of scent that didn't belong in a clean house. Stale, faintly metallic, like something old and rotting, but just beneath the threshold of recognition. I checked everywhere. The fridge, the sink, the vents, nothing. And yet, the smell lingered. I started keeping my bedroom door locked at night. I told myself it was just to ease my nerves, to help me sleep better. And for a little while it worked. A few days passed without anything strange happening. I convinced myself I had been overreacting. The house was old. It had its quirks. Then, one evening, my friend Jake came over. He was the kind of person who could make anything feel normal. We ordered takeout, watched bad movies, and laughed until my cheeks hurt. "Man, you finally got a real place," he said, looking around. "No more neighbors banging on the walls. I'm jealous." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. For a moment, I let myself believe everything was fine. Then the noises changed. I woke up a few nights later to something new, a soft scraping sound, like nails dragging against wood. I turned on my bedside lamp, hard pounding. The sound had come from the hallway right outside my bedroom door. I stared at the door, listening. A long pause, silence, then a whisper. It was too quiet to make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Slow, deliberate. Someone was speaking, right outside my door. I sat frozen, every muscle locked in place. I don't know how long I stayed like that, listening to the silence, but eventually, I convinced myself it had been a dream. The next morning, I found something that made my stomach drop. The door to the basement was open. I never used the basement. It was unfinished, cold, mostly empty except for some old shelves and a rusted water heater. The door was always closed, always locked, except now, it wasn't. It was open just an inch, a dark sliver of space yawning beneath the frame. I stared at it for a long time. Then, forcing myself to move, I walked over and pulled it shut. I turned the lock, checked it twice. That night, I pushed a chair in front of my bedroom door before going to sleep. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to footsteps in the kitchen. Slow, deliberate. I stayed completely still, barely breathing. The footsteps moved closer, into the hallway, and then they stopped, right outside my bedroom door. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking too hard to type. I wanted to call anyone, but what would I say? That I heard footsteps, that I thought someone was inside, but I was too scared to check. Then, a soft, quiet creak, the sound of weight pressing against wood. Someone was standing just on the other side. I could hear their breathing, shallow, slow. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to disappear. The air felt thick, suffocating. And then, the doorknob turned. The lock held, but the knob twisted back and forth, testing. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. And then, nothing. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I didn't sleep. The next morning, the basement door was open again. The lock on the back door was undone. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. But I couldn't stay. I packed a bag and left that day. Found a motel. The house is still mine, but I don't go back. I don't know how long someone else was living there with me, hiding in the basement, watching, waiting. I don't know what would have happened if I had opened that door, and I never want to find out.